Y'all want to see a dead body?
The dead body, which is really just my version of a liquidation play. You see the market grinding up, breaking resistance, going towards the next area of balance. So you're not likely going to see a market breaking resistance, going through a low volume area, finding the next balance, and going through that all in the same session. With that in mind, at some point it's likely going to pull back. It's likely going to reverse. And it's either going to be here or further up and into the zone where the prior balance is. So either way, wherever it pulls back from, the next likely spot would be to retest this breakout. With that in mind, let's go down to the intraday action. So here we see a few key components. That is a move up with relatively low volume compared to the highest node where price is chopping around. It's auctioning, buyers, sellers, doing business. You want this node to be larger than the other nodes. You want most of the activity to be here. The reason this is important is because a big node signifies two things: a large inventory of sellers and buyers. And if we're looking for a liquidation, we're looking for a lot of late buyers. The bigger the node, the more late buyers are in it. And if they don't get continuation, the more late buyers to begin to liquidate. Having a lot of offsides inventory to unwind is very, very key. Having low volume underneath provides an easier path for the market to reauction. You have to wonder, if the market finds access in an area where it didn't want to trade prior, what would it look like if there were willing participants? It would likely begin to fill that range with volume. If you've got a lot of buyers up here and a lot of sellers, which is what would be required to build a large node, what would happen then if price starts to accept below all of those willing buyers, which can turn into one-sided tape, meaning the sellers are willing to sell, and now the buyers are going to become sellers. So let's run through this. Price goes up, starts to build higher, leaves a pretty unresolved high. It's not the time to short. Let it shake out, let more volume come into the market, and see what happens. So passing through. Now they move higher. So what's in that order flow? Not too much. There's not that much of an interest. This is a good sign. This is a decent show of hands. The market finally pokes out of this range. We'll mark it. The market finally pokes out of this range, finds very little interest compared to this range. So what does it do? It goes back into this range. Let's keep it going. Goes back through the range, higher low hold. But you have to remember, the selling isn't worth anything if it can't find acceptance below the range. So let's continue. Still can't find acceptance below this range. But what it does is test the upside a second time. So what does the order flow look like then? This is a good bit of volume, quite a bit of buying with a taper up top. Let's go back to the order flow. The first time they broke out, it was pretty weak, not too much interest. This time, a little more volume built, and they lost it again. This is 2 attempts with this build right here. This is a good sign. To me, this is the best version of the dead body setup. When the market gives you the show of hands outside of the range, not once, but twice, it fails. So let's replay this. We'll go 3x speed. We'll clear this tape. We'll see what the market does afterwards. So we can see it start to accept this range again. We'll fast forward it a little bit. It's moving through it again. Fast forward. Now we're downside of the range. And it breaks. So this is very key. 2 attempts up here, both show a lack of interest to continue bidding through. Now they test the downside and they crack the downside. And look how thin it is underneath. So keep in mind, the break is just one part of this equation. You want to see a rejection of this range. So let's skip it. Do you see it come back up a little bit, rejects the range, continues downwards? And this is the real test. They're back in the range and you see this kind of order flow. It's tapering as it gets back into the range, right? So let's play this. We'll clear the tape. We'll have a look. They're trying to find their way back in this range. You can see the selling still coming in. The buyers are not able to get acceptance into this range anymore. So as they trade higher into these 70s, it's the same thing every time. Tapered. So they start to move lower. Let's fast forward this. And they break. So, important piece of information. Where is volume building now? It's starting to fill out the lower parts. You can see it on the footprint. They broke it, came back up, tried to find its way back in, and lost this volume. This is important. So as we skip through, you start to see failed rebids, and the market starts to build volume lower and lower and lower. Where there was a lack of interest, there is now newfound interest. Only this time, a lot of buy-side inventory that's looking to unwind. So you continue, and you can see the market just starts to build lower. Look at every 5-minute footprint bar. The volume is moving lower. It's under the 9 EMA now, and it just continues. So they're at VWAP now. They're back at the breakout retest zone, which was prior resistance. And if this doesn't hold, there's plenty of low volume left to be filled. All the way here, which would be this. This is where the sellers found themselves stuck in the morning before this rally up. If VWAP doesn't hold, there is plenty of room left to fill this volume in to these 880s. So let's see what happens. They start to build, and you look at the footprint. Where is it building? Lower. Still accepting lower, until it finally trades into this area. So we can see why now this is such a big key component, having a very, very large node up above and overhead. It means there's a lot of inventory located within this range. And if you're looking for liquidation, the more buyers there are, the better. If the market loses this range and fails to accept the range, this two-sided tape becomes one-sided tape. The sellers in this range get rewarded, and the buyers become sellers. And this leads to one-sided sell tape. The setup doesn't come around too often, but when it does, it can be quite lucrative. The biggest downside to the setup is that it requires a lot of patience. You have to let the volume build. You have to let the market auction, and you have to let things shake out. The thing about the dead body setup is that the runway is always large. We're talking about a liquidation trade. The issue is people keep trying to call the top when they can just wait for all of the buyers to be off sides. You don't need to be early to the party. You need to be on time. And this is perfect timing. As soon as the market makes the choice that it's no longer going to accept this range, this is when it makes the next decision. which is further lower, towards VWAP, back to the breakout retest, and if that doesn't hold, back to the original node of the day. Again, you do not need to have sell orders in this range. What you want to do is get sell orders when the market chooses to break outside of this range. Remember, we're dealing with a lot of inventory and a large runway. There is no hurry to be positioned in this range. You want to be positioned when the market tips its hand. And that's either up here when it fails to continue building this node and starts accepting this larger range again, or the bottom of this range when price comes back and the market tells us that it's no longer willing to auction this range. If you can be patient enough and let the market shake itself out, this setup can reward you very heavily. And that concludes my deep dive on the dead body setup. Again, just a particular liquidation play. I hope this helps, and I hope you guys don't need a bunch of stops before the move actually happens. As always, if this was helpful, hit the likes, post a comment, hit the subscribe button. It takes me quite a bit of time to make these videos, so it would be much appreciated. Peace out, YouTube.